The letter trembled in her hands. Not from the cold, though the November draft cutting beneath the library door was cruel and unrelenting, but from the singular, devastating realization that every word written upon that page had never been meant for her eyes. And yet, here it was, here she was, and nothing, not her station, not her pride, not the careful, measured composure she had constructed across 5 long years of marriage, would ever be the same again. Her name was Lady Elara Ashford, Duchess of Carverstone, and she had just discovered that her husband had been deeply, desperately, achingly in love with someone else long before she had ever entered his life. But let us begin where all great stories of the heart must begin, not at the end, but at the quiet, unsuspecting moment before the world tilts on its axis. It was the 3rd morning after the Duke's departure for Parliament that Lady Elara found herself wandering the east wing of Carverstone Manor. The household had grown unnervingly still without him, the corridors stretching long and grey like the November sky beyond the leaded windows. She had no particular destination in mind. Perhaps she sought only the comfort of motion, the small rebellion of solitude in a house full of servants who watched her with careful, cautious eyes. She descended into the lower gallery, a room seldom opened, furnished with the forgotten relics of generations past, and it was there she saw it. Pushed against the far wall, half obscured by a Holland cloth, sat an old military trunk, scarred leather, brass fittings gone green with age, the initials C.A. pressed deep into the lid. Carver Ashford, her husband, the Duke. She did not know precisely what compelled her. Perhaps it was loneliness. Perhaps it was the peculiar desperation of a woman who has spent 5 years beside a man and still cannot claim to truly know him. She knelt upon the cold stone floor, her silk morning gown pooling around her, and she lifted the lid. And before we go any further into this story, if you are already feeling that flutter of anticipation in your chest, I want you to do something for me. Press that like button and subscribe to the Duke's Lost Letters, because every single week we bring you stories exactly like this one, full of passion, secrets, and the kind of love that refuses to stay buried. Now, back to Elara and what she found inside that trunk. The interior smelled of cedar and old campaigns. There were his military medals, arranged with a precision that felt almost tender. A folded regimental coat, deep red, the brass buttons dulled but intact. A pair of riding gloves, cracked with age. And beneath all of it, tucked beneath everything, as though placed there with deliberate, careful concealment, a bundle of letters, tied with a faded blue ribbon. They were not addressed, they bore no seal, but each one began the same way. My darling Rosalind. Elara's breath left her body. She should not have read further. Every rule of propriety, every principle of a well-bred lady's conduct screamed at her to replace the ribbon, close the trunk, and walk away. She was the Duchess of Carverstone. She was not a woman given to scenes or to sentiment. She had married a man of duty, and she had made herself a wife of equal measure. But her fingers, those treacherous, yearning fingers, unfolded the first letter. My darling Rosalind, there are no words adequate to the task I set myself tonight, and yet I find I cannot sleep until I have attempted them. I have watched you this evening across your father's drawing room, and I confess to you that I am entirely, irreparably undone. You laughed at something your cousin said. I did not hear the words, and I thought, quite suddenly and without warning, that I would willingly surrender every acre of Carverstone, every title, every privilege of my birth, simply to be the man who makes you laugh like that for the remainder of your days. Elara set the letter down. Then, with a hand that she commanded, desperately, silently commanded to remain steady, she picked up the second.
Rosalind, they tell me I am to be sent to the peninsula within a fortnight. I find I cannot tell you this face to face, for I am not certain I possess the courage. The battlefield does not frighten me. The prospect of leaving England without declaring myself, that, my love, is what undoes me entirely. Letter after letter, a dozen perhaps, more, each one a universe of longing, each one sealed with the most ardent, most reckless declarations of love Elara had ever encountered, and none one of them, not a single one, had ever been sent. She did not hear the door. She did not hear the footsteps. She heard only his voice.
"Elara!" She turned. The Duke of Carverstone stood in the doorway of the gallery, his riding coat still on, his dark hair disordered from the road. He had returned 2 days early. He was staring at the letters in her lap with an expression she had never once seen upon his face in 5 years of marriage. He looked, she realized, with a shock that nearly stopped her heart, absolutely terrified. The silence between them stretched and pooled, taut as a wire. "I thought you were in London," she said at last. Her voice was admirably composed. She despised herself for it. Parliament adjourned early. He did not move from the doorway. His eyes had not left the letters. "Elara. Who was Rosalind?" The name fell between them like a stone into still water, and the ripples were immediate and devastating. He crossed the room slowly and lowered himself into the armchair opposite her, not beside her, she noted, opposite, as though he required the distance. He pressed his hands together, and for a long moment he simply looked at the cold grate. She was the daughter of Lord Pemberton of Suffolk. There was an understanding between us, before my commission, before the war. You loved her. It was not a question. He answered it anyway. I did, yes. Elara nodded once. It was a very small nod. It cost her a great deal. And these letters? I wrote them in camp, at Salamanca, at Vittoria. He exhaled slowly. I never sent them. By the time I returned to England, she had married another, Lord Hadley's eldest son. It was the right thing for her family, for her future. A pause. She did not know I had survived the fever at Badajoz. No one did for some weeks. Elara looked down at the bundle in her hands. She never knew. No. And yet you kept them. He was quiet for a very long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he rose from the chair and came to kneel beside her on the cold stone floor, precisely where she had knelt to open the trunk. He was a tall man, the Duke, broad-shouldered and not given to gestures of supplication. Watching him kneel felt to Elara like watching something ancient and immovable choose, deliberately, consciously, to bow. I kept them, he said, because I did not wish to pretend that I had never felt such things, and because I had begun to hope, Elara, these past years, that I might learn to write such letters again. She looked at him then, truly looked, the way she had not permitted herself to look at him in a very long time, because there is a particular danger in looking too closely at someone you have tried very hard not to love. To whom? She whispered. His grey eyes, steady and serious as she had always known them, met hers with an honesty that she had not expected and could not bear and could not look away from. To you, he said, if you would allow me the privilege. And there it is, dear listeners, the moment when 5 years of careful, quiet distance collapsed into something far more extraordinary than either of them had ever dared to name. Because love, as the Regency era understood it better than most, is not always a great blazing declaration made at the altar. Sometimes it is a man kneeling on cold stone with his oldest shame laid bare, asking permission
to begin again. Elara did not answer him with words. She pressed the bundle of letters, all of them, every unsent word, back into his hands. And then, with a dignity that was entirely her own, she laced her fingers through his and held on. Outside, the November wind pressed hard against the manor's ancient walls, but inside the east gallery, beside an old military trunk and a flickering candle guttering low in its brass holder, the Duke of Carverstone finally came home. If this story moved you, if you found yourself holding your breath right alongside Elara in that cold gallery, then this channel was made for you. Subscribe to the Duke's Lost Letters right now and never miss a single story. New tales of secret love, hidden scandal, and Regency-era heartbreak arrive every week, and I promise you, the best stories are still to come. Until next time, dear listener, may your own letters always find their way home.